Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paper Fold. I am your host, Sarah, and I am so glad to be back. Before I get to my guest today, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Noted, the Greeting Card Expo taking place May 20th and May 21st. But the fun kicks off this Wednesday, May 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Noted at Noted Product Awards. This is only the second year of this greeting card competition's existence. It essentially came into being alongside COVID-19, but it is definitely part of its silver lining. We have 10 really fun categories such as best use of profanity and best color combo, and of course, best Corona card. I assembled a really small group of judges with some of the most discerning eyes I know of in the industry. Dan Collier of Daniel Richards, Audrey Woolen of Urbanic, Chelsea Shukov of Sugar Paper, and Chandra Greer of Greer Chicago, as well as myself, to judge what I can only describe as a really heartfelt and massive group of nearly 200 greeting card entries. We just recorded the awards presentation yesterday, and even though I tripped over my words a few times, I'm really excited for that moment when we all get to see them and learn who the winners are. Plus, then there is Noted itself, which promises to be 2 days of fabulous greeting card discoveries. I hope you can make it. If you can't, I'll be sharing the winners in an upcoming Paper Nerd post. There is just so much beauty and brilliant messaging. Please check it out. On to my guest today. Molly Hatch is definitely a paper person, but she kind of came about it in an ancillary way. The daughter of an organic dairy farmer and a painter with a family tree that includes a founder of RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. She has a formal education in ceramics, drawing, painting, and printmaking, and began her career as a studio potter and college professor. But through a series of incidents that I will let her relay, her lifestyle brand, Molly Hatch, was born. Her tagline is modern heirlooms with everyday charm. And once you are familiar with her distinctive style that puts a fresh, colorful spin on tradition, it's too late, you're hooked. My guess is the place that you have most likely encountered her work already is Anthropologie. In the last decade, Molly has done over 500 projects for them. Such a huge body of work that she has shaped their brand. The effect is such that if you are already an Anthropologie customer and you see her work, it is already familiar to you. And just like all the other merchandise in this story, you want to own all of it. That familiar vibe was definitely what happened to me when our paths crossed and we got acquainted in real life, maybe about 5 years back. I was walking the stationery aisles in New York Now and approaching Big Wheel Press's booth. That's an exquisite range of letterpress cards and stationery out of East Hampton, Massachusetts. And Molly ran up to me and introduced herself. She was super friendly and fun. We hit it off right away. She knew who I was. Looking back, I'm embarrassed. I should have known who she was. Molly showed me the cards she had created with Bill. And since her ceramics, were all over Anthropologie, I could tell it looked familiar, but I couldn't really place it. Then she took a picture with me and wanted to put it on her Instagram. And Bill said to me, Molly has a lot of followers. I went and looked, and it was somewhere in the 25,000 follower range. So I slowly put it together that she was really well known. And it didn't really blend with this friendly, easygoing, loving life persona. But I'm here to tell you that is authentically Molly. That is who she is. And she is so much fun, as you'll see. With her talent and resume, she could very well be a very stuffy, entitled type of person, but she is 100% the opposite. So I initially wanted to interview Molly because I thought it is so interesting how her career trajectory overlapped with Anthropologie and then meandered into other licensing projects. I wanted to find out, too, if she wanted to know the secret sauce for getting into Anthropologie, as she calls it, as I knew that would be the question on every maker's mind. But as you'll learn, she was just getting started. Today, May 17th, 2021, she launches an exclusive capsule clothing collection for Joni Clothing. That it's a British range, and this collection has 19 signature Joni Clothing styles. They're vintage-inspired pieces. They're each lovingly emblazoned with Molly's fantastically eccentric prints and slogans. In addition, the collection is almost entirely made with sustainable and ecological fabric, as well as organic cottons. Molly gifted me a teacup dress, and I have to tell you, I have had a lot of feels since I first got it. First off, full disclosure, I can't even remember the last new dress I got. So I think maybe it was December 2019. So it was just surreal to open a box and get a dress. But it is so divine. I love every detail, from the quirky pattern to the just clean lines of the collar. It is something else. It is her ceramics. It is that Anthropologie tray in dress form. So I wore mine during the Noted Awards recording, so that's yet another reason to check it out. Though, of course, you'll only get to see it from the waist up. You can buy it through Molly's site as well as that of Joni Clothing. I'll link both in the liner notes. That's enough from me. I'll let Molly take it away from here right after this. Hey, paper peeps. So by now, many of my listeners are familiar with the force of stationary nature, better known as Girl with Knife. But if you aren't, time to change all that. From the first moment I spied her booth at her New York Now trade show debut in 2019, I was smitten with this cutting edge range that the world was calling out for. We all just didn't know it yet. Everything is nimbly collaged to life, slice by careful slice by the talented and exquisite Alicia Castaldi. This stylish collection of cards, journals, and notepads that have sprung to life under this fashionista's exacting knife is sharp, snarky, sleek, and occasionally very sweet, just like that BFF who would love to hear from you right now. For that reason, whenever I get my hands on Girl with Knife merchandise, I hoard it and use it most sparingly. Alicia recently launched gift wrap, and if you're already a fan of her range, you're familiar with her patterns and quality, but these super thick sheets elevate any gift from off the rack to atelier. Her recent releases of Midnight Botanical, Rare Creatures, and Chasing Dreams bring the total styles that slay up to 10. And if you're like me and that you fall in love with a range and want to reside in that world, you're in luck. Alicia recently unveiled Knife House, which was one of the few good things I can think of that came out of 2020. That was when Alicia shifted her operation from LA to this newly renovated concept home in Palm Springs. This completely private, walled and gated estate features panoramic mountain views and countless luxe surprises. Take a tour through its magnificent blush pink doors at www.knifehousepalmsprings.com or find it on Instagram at Knifehouse Palm Springs. Good luck getting your jaw off the floor as you take in this perfect California adult playground. These glamorous digs are available for photo shoots, film projects, special events, and short-term rentals. But just as importantly, all that exquisite Palm Springs flora and fauna have inspired Alicia's soon-to-be-released journal and notepads. She tells me that they're also expanding into home decor, which I, for one, absolutely can't wait to see. So now that you've glimpsed this wonderful world, you need this cutting-edge lifestyle brand in your life. Find Girl with Knife in hundreds of shops across the U.S. and over half a dozen countries. Alicia and Girl with Knife have also been featured in New York Magazine, LA Business Journal, BuzzFeed, and of course, Stationery Trends. I've run her work there countless times. Alicia was one of our 10 designers to watch in 2020 and proceeded to live up to that designation when last May, 2 out of her 3 nominated cards took CHAP honors at the Noted and Noted virtual greeting card competition. Then, for our winter 2021 issue of Stationery Trends, Alicia designed the 10 designers to watch frontispiece for us. It is something else if you haven't seen it yet. Also, as of 2021, Alicia is represented by none other than the Daniel Richards showrooms in Atlanta and Dallas. Dan's eye is renowned in this biz, so his representing Girl with Knife is unsurprising, but it also means that this brand needs to be on your design radar stat. Check out this beguiling range at the recently refreshed girlwithknife.com. Right now, the theme is Season of Fierce, and I think we can all use one of those about now. I guarantee your stationery will slay. Welcome, Molly.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
My next question to you, which I know like every single listener has, it's like, how the heck did you first get in Anthropologie? Like, can you take us back and just sort of tell me how that played out?
Sure. It is sort of the $1 million question because everyone kind of would like that to happen to them. And I definitely launched like my whole career off of the platform that Anthropologie gave me. I'm not going to lie. That's definitely why I'm sitting here having this conversation with you. I graduated with my master's degree in 2000. And forgive me, this is a little bit of I need to give you a little backstory.
This is fine.
I graduated with my master's degree in ceramics in 2008. Really bad year to be like launching yourself into the world. It was like, financial world imploded. The house we bought during graduate school that we were going to turn around in 3 years and make $50,000 off of, went underwater basically. And like we got our money back ish out of what we invested in it, and we couldn't find work. And so we moved back east from Colorado. I went to the University of Colorado. They have a really like top tier ceramics program. And I thought I was going to be a professor. And I was for a while. I taught at RISD. I taught at a local community college, and I taught at Dartmouth for a little while. And it just didn't really pan out the way I had envisioned. So what I knew how to do was make pots. I knew how to make pottery for a living because that's what I was doing before I went to graduate school, and was not interested in being a production potter. I knew that I had too many ideas, and I had bigger ideas than, so I thought being a professor was going to answer that question for me and sort of figure out how to have a career that was a little more academic, really. And so I was selling work through galleries that I had established relationships with prior to graduate school. And I just called, and I could not make work fast enough, even during this economic downturn. It was really weird. And I was making these great mugs, and one of the things that I was making were these mugs that were selling for like $120 at that time, which is still, that was it was like 17 years ago or something at this point.
Wow. That's like the equivalent of like
right?
couple $100, 200. Like that would be, yeah.
It wasn't that long ago. It was, I'm sorry. Wow. It was like 11
those
years.
Those must have been
12
gorgeous.
Years ago.
They were great. That's a pretty penny.
But the handmade version of what I'm designing now, at that time, that's what I had to charge for a mug, and I was still not making a living. I was still losing money, and I was selling everything I could make. And I had work in a gallery in New York called Greenwich House Pottery, and it's on Jones Street, Jones and Bleecker, in the Village. And like great things have come up. Kate Winslet bought some of my work there. It was like famous people take lessons there. It's it's just an amazing spot. And they had a little gallery, and they were selling my pots there, which is how Kate Winslet ended up with one of them. But and I don't even know if I'm supposed to be able to. I probably just there. That might be one of those things where I'm not sure I can say that, but I did.
I think
Kate Winslet,
okay.
I'm sorry.
She's probably using it right now. She's using it right now.
I hope so, because it was a really nice mug. And one of their executives, Patty Eisen, who's now actually working in real estate, she walked by and saw my work in the window and said, I need to tell the ceramics tableware and the tableware buyer to reach out to this person. Her work is perfect for Anthropologie. We want to collaborate with her. And so I got an email from them in 2009, 2010. It was early 2010. And
Uh-huh.
I had my daughter and she was about 10 months old. So I was really struggling financially. We were on welfare. I had 2 degrees. It was like totally crazy,
Whoa.
and I was like, why? This is like not the way it's supposed to go. Right. I've spent way too much money on an art degree. My husband was supporting us with he's a builder. And when Anthropologie emailed, I thought it was like a joke at first. I was like, what? Like, this is my dream come true. You've got to be kidding me. And so I did the like, do I email back immediately, or is this like a boyfriend asking me on a date? Do I wait a couple
Like
days and
three
like seem
days.
like I'm busy?
Pretend you're your assistant emailing
Seriously,
back.
I had this conversation. I was like, do I immediately reply, or do I like? I was like, I had to like check myself a little bit. And so I replied 2 days later. I gave it the like 2 days
I think
because
I
I'm so
would have.
busy.
You want to reply in 10 minutes, but you can't.
Yeah, no. And I didn't, I had to sort of think about what I wanted to reply. But basically they were asking if I would want to collaborate with them. And I said yes. Except that I knew that I was losing money on my work and they were asking me to sell work to them as wholesale. And I just knew that if I couldn't do it in that capacity, how the heck was I going to do it for
Right.
them at the quantities they were probably going to want? And then it was like posing sort of a career problem. Like, if I can't make enough pots for Anthropologie to sell, then what the heck am I like? How am I ever going to make a living doing this? I've got to change everything about what I'm
Right.
doing in order to make that
Right.
work.
Right. Right.
But
So,
that was more of
yeah.
an existential problem that I had to solve later. But
Sure. And I mean, for a lot of our listeners, like who might not understand, I mean, like you get a small maker such as yourself gets a purchase order from like a major corporation and it's basically an offer. Like you might be retailing, let's say if it's for cards, you might be retailing your cards for $5 a pop and they'll say,
right,
we'll give you 90 cents a
right,
unit. And you'll say, I can't make that work. And they'll say, we'll give you 90 cents a unit. Like
right.
that's, they figured it out and that's what they can pay you. So, that's kind of what you were going through somewhat, I assume.
Yes, exactly. And I think it was just before we even got into that conversation, I knew that I mean, who at that time I had been watching Anthropologie and going into their stores and, shopping the sale rack for years because I was on welfare. There was no shopping at Anthropologie for me at that point. But, I think I probably bought a couple of things that I shouldn't have and didn't tell my husband kind of thing. Like, the sweater was really too expensive, but I love it. Coveted
Oh
things in
my
there. And I
gosh.
would sort of window shop.
When I was
Go ahead.
going through my divorce, I'm in New let's see, that must have been 2003. I was working in New York and I used to walk to the Anthropologie at by Union Square and I
Yep.
found that's what got me through my divorce mentally, like their sale room, like finding stuff. Like I still have stuff that I wear all the time from their
Oh,
sale room.
totally. Absolutely.
Anyway.
And all throughout graduate school, I'd go in there and sort of look at things and be like, this isn't quite right. They could do this better. And I was doing research.
Sorry
I
to
didn't know it.
digress, but I mean,
Didn't
like
know it.
most people have such like sentimental attachments to that
Oh,
store, and like I am no
completely.
different.
I've had so many conversations with people about walking in and sort of that magical environment that they had created, like a European marketplace, right? Like you felt like you've
Mhm.
been transported. And my first experience of an Anthropologie was when the Boylston Street one opened in Boston. It had to have been the mid 90s. I mean, it was like maybe 98, 99 or something like that. And it was just like 3 floors of magic. I was like, what is this?
Right.
I mean, I couldn't fit into anything. I was like way too, it was just like I was not their customer by a long shot, but who knew that I was going to become their, coveted
Little
designer
did you
someday.
know.
Little
So
did I know.
I'm sorry. So you're in these early, sort of discussions with them, and I'm sorry,
Yes.
you were saying.
No, that's fine. I think we all have to acknowledge our obsession
I
first
know.
and then move on.
I think someone could make a whole podcast just waxing eloquent about
There might
Anthropologie.
be one.
There probably is.
So I responded and I said, look, I was, because I was so aware, because I had been such a huge fan of Anthropologie, I was seeing Natalie Latay's work everywhere. And I knew she wasn't making that. I knew they were licensing it from her. I didn't know what licensing was. I didn't even know what the word was at the time, but I was like, I need to design for you and you need to make these things. And I can't do it for you. And so is that something that you would consider? And they said, absolutely. And then it was like radio silence for 2 months, which is totally normal for them. But I was like, they hate me. I messed it up. It's like horrible. And I had, the world in my hand, and it was got, it was like one of those moments where you're like, I came on too strong. It was like my boyfriend.
Right?
Like
what did I say? They found another potter.
Right. It was like all over. I've ruined the opportunity of a lifetime. Anyway, so obviously that didn't happen. I had an exhibition at a wonderful ceramic studio in Philadelphia, which is where Anthropologie is based, in like June, sort of a couple months after not hearing from them. And I had been making this one of a kind work for this show for a while. And I was like, on the off chance that they would come to the opening, like maybe this is my opportunity to be like, come see the work in person. It just so happens that, total serendipity. The world had laid out a plan for me, like the red carpet, really.
It was obviously meant to be.
Totally. I mean, it was like right place, right time kind of thing. And so they were like, oh, sure, we'll come to your opening. That would be great. No pressure. Like the entire Anthropologie buying team's now coming to my opening, my first opening after graduate school, no sweat. And I'm there with like my 10-month-old daughter and my husband and my entire family. And I was like so awkward. I was trying, like, how do I drive? I had no money. I couldn't buy like clothes to go to the opening event. I was like disastrous. Anyway, they showed up. Of course, not just one person showed up, like an entire team of people showed up to this opening, and it was like totally intimidating. And they were like, and let me also preface this by saying, like, in the art world, enthusiasm is like crass. It's like not something that you don't show it's like it's tacky to show your emotion and excitement for anything, right? So, but not in the licensing and design world. It's like quite the opposite.
No, it's not. People get excited all the time. And it's like that at like my mom gets mad at me every time. Well, when I used to go to flea markets with her, if I got excited over anything, like, stop it. Like, don't.
Right. They know, and you can't bargain.
Right. Shut up. Right. It's the same thing.
Your mom sounds amazing.
She taught me so much about.
I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like I am so transparent. It's like not even funny. I mean, people will not bargain with me. They're like, "Lady, I know you want this. Like, wait, you're not gonna walk away." So
they were enthusiastic
they were insanely enthusiastic, and I didn't trust it because I had been, galleries will be like, we'll talk and we'll call you back. They're jumping for joy behind the scenes, but like, they're not going to let you know that. They're going to be like all cool as a cucumber and like not, I mean, like major excitement from a gallery is that you've even gotten their attention, like that they're even talking to you is like an honor, really. So that you've even been recognized as a person who's like standing in front of them. So if Anthropologie is like jumping for joy, I was like, oh God, like what's going on? I have no idea how to react to this. But they were like, this is so amazing. We want to talk to you about, licensing these mugs, which were my first collection of mugs with them, were shown in that show. And the show got a lot of press. Design Sponge wrote it up, and it was really, it was like a peak Design Sponge at the time. Grace Bonney became a fan really quickly after that. It was just like kind of a bunch of things really kind of came together for me during that period of time. But they sent me home and said, we would love to do 5 mugs or 6 mugs, and can you design tableware to go with it? And I was like, sure. And I was like, I have no idea how to do this. Like, what does that mean? So I had a minor coronary, I went home and was like, now I have to design. And I figured they weren't going to be able to make my exact process happen in the factory, which of course I was really wrong about. And because in the ceramics sort of industry is sort of vilified, which is unfortunate because it's really just another tool, and it depends on how you're sort of, and I've really come around to respecting industry and the industrial manufacturing process as a way to get your idea out there more democratically. And I think there was like an existential or like career crisis that happened, but I'm going to get to that. But the like I haven't had 25 of those, but this is the big one.
I feel like I've had 25 this month, but that's
Oh, believe me. I mean, everyone thinks I think it's like 5 or 6 times a day I'm saying to myself, no, life is not back to normal yet, everybody. I do not have my kids still not in school full time. Like I don't have a vaccine yet. I'm like, it's just like, but everyone's expecting work like normal. Anyway.
Yeah, I know.
So I went home and I had to figure out that thing of figuring out, I thought they were going to need decals from me, which is, a process where you put a print on top of a ceramic surface that's already made. And I knew that I could hand them my blanks and that they could copy those. And that was going to be no problem. Like I could hand them the mug forms and the plate forms and that I could design. And I knew how to do that part. And that was really something I was bringing to the table because I could hand forms to them. Whereas most companies will take like blank forms from the factory that they already like have and
it's just
put an image on.
Right.
So for me to be able to make that form and give them something new, a new language to sort of work with as far as form is really what, that was a large part of why we were successful together, because I could do both the surface and the form and make them work together in a way that a lot of other people won't or can't, because they haven't been trained to think of an object as all the way around, right? Like a three-dimensional sculptural object. But even though it's tableware, there's an inside, an outside, a bottom, and all those different parts that you have to think about. Which applies to anything. It applies to a card, and it applies to anything you're making, which is why books have become sculptural objects for me and other things too. But so I figured out my drawing process, and I came in with all my pots, and I made them just the way I would want them to be, with the surface on them already, and the way I would want the surface to be, because it was placement, like it gave them scale references and everything. And so they went to the factory, and I had this luxury of being able to drive to their home offices. And at that time they had only really done licensing with a couple of artists, particularly in tableware. And they weren't really set up for artist collaborations the way they are now. And it's something that I helped them develop. Actually, I really encourage them to set up a particular like a staff person to coordinate artist relationships, because we think differently than someone who's a surface designer or an illustrator who's already used to working as a licensed artist, or who understands some of the process and like what some of the pitfalls and things are. And having a program for artists, really,
right? Because it's its own beast, and if it's going to be woven into your brand like that, you really need a dedicated attention to it.
And there were so many questions, and I can't tell you how many years of phone calls I've fielded of people, so worried that they're going to get ripped off, or, how does this work? And so they, 4 or 5 months later, so it's like now, like September, October, the first samples come back from the factory, and they're identical to my work. And I was like, uh-oh, this isn't how I thought this was going to be a different process. It wasn't going to interrupt my handmade pottery. And it totally was like, oh, this is exactly what I would make in my studio, except I didn't make it, Chinese factory did. So, and it was hand painted. I mean, it was really like, it totally blew my mind and rewrote the book on like what I thought.
Well, yeah. I mean, because you're used to churning it out yourself, and someone else made it and it looks like you. That had to be very disconcerting. Like seeing someone else with your face. Like, it's weird, right?
And I think also with this long history of all my ceramic professors saying this, your industry is not good at things. They're going to ruin things. It was really vilified. It really was not considered a good thing. It was a sellout. I mean, it's like a classic academic thing of being like 30 years behind everybody.
I know. I was trying to explain to my teenager how, like, when I was around her age, people used to be very concerned about selling out, like young artists. Like that is not a concern today. Very much.
You make your living however you can.
Right.
Now,
like if a like if a corporation wants your work, like please,
you figure it out. I mean, I think it's more about aligning your values. More now, it's more about, are you selling out your values to
Right,
work with
right.
industry. And that was a very important conversation early on with Anthropologie for me. I was like, please, I cannot go to this factory in China and see that they're being treated fairly, or that they're being
Sure.
paid a living wage in China, whatever that is. And
Good for
that,
you.
and I had to sort of sit down with the tableware buyers and ask some of those hard questions. And they were very honest and truthful. And I really felt good coming out of that conversation at the end of it. And so I proceeded to work with them on good faith that they were telling me the truth. And I had no other way to hold them accountable other than to ask them the hard questions, which was clear that other people don't often. Still I ask the hard questions, and it's like people look like jaw drop in the middle of the
Right.
initial conversation, and I'm like, this shouldn't be a surprise anymore. God,
Right. I mean, yes, those can be uncomfortable conversations to start, but you should. And especially if it's your work, because, your work is your
or
baby. And
if you don't care, then fine, but I care. So
I care. Yeah, no, I care very much as well. So
right.
what were your first, so you did the mugs, did you do trays? What were the other pieces in the
I did.
initial?
So there was 5 mugs and a dinner plate and a salad plate and a bowl. And they did so well with them, the other thing that was really part of why I was so successful over and over, and that we've done over 500 projects together over
That's insane.
the last 10 years. I mean, it's sort of
Yeah.
unprecedented. And everyone looks at me and says, I want to do that. And it's just I don't even really understand. I mean, if I had the secret sauce of Anthropologie, I would totally tell everybody. I don't. There isn't one.
Invite them to your art opening.
Yeah, exactly. So at the time I would go down and bring, when I was smart, I was like a Rolex salesman on the street. I was like, okay, so you like my mugs? I got other mugs. Let me show you some other mugs. I brought bins of stuff. I'd pull it out and be like, what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? And then they'd be like, wow, you have these other drawings. I just brought my portfolio, basically, not knowing whether they would be interested. Because I was like, look, I sort of envision these as other things. These are some other drawings that I've been doing, and I could see them on this or that. And suddenly they're pulling in the glass buyer, and they're pulling in the home textile buyer, and they're pulling in the candle buyer and the beauty buyer. And and all of a sudden there's 20 people in the room, and they're all freaking out about this artwork because somehow I hit a nerve, right?
Right.
The right thing at the right time, and I had my foot in the door, and damn it, I wasn't gonna let it go.
You're not pulling it no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you've done collections you've done holiday collections, you've done,
right.
Have you done you've done baby, you've done, or have you, juvenile, almost every segment,
right.
Seasonal, different. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and
I never thought that it was going to continue. I kept going back and bringing more, and I was always like, this can end anytime, but I'm going to and I think that the big thing was that, and persisting. I didn't let it go when they didn't call me back. I persisted by following up with more things than they asked for and showed them new. And I hit deadlines. I brought things on time. In fact, I turned things around faster than, they were always like, wow, how did you do that? And it's because I didn't have anything else going on. So it was
I think that's amazing. I mean, those are all great things, that's all very, very smart to do. I remember reading once years ago that Elvis Presley was basically managed by his parents. He started very young, and his dad, they grew up very, very poor. And his dad was always afraid that the bottom was going to fall out, and everything was going to end the next day. And it really guided his career decisions. And I think a lot of artists are and makers are you just work on that same, not that everybody's been dirt poor, but you're working on that same supposition, this could all end tomorrow. I gotta, really make this work.
Yeah. And especially when it's a client like that. So very quickly, you I mean, I sort of joked about it after 3 or 4 years that I was at the School of Anthropologie and I was training to be a designer, and that I was getting my degree soon, and I was going to graduate, and that's kind of how I treated it. I was like, I'm going to do as many things as I possibly can and sort of teach myself about this process. And I literally taught myself textile design. I mean, I went to fine art school. No one ever taught me how to use any design software, how to scan. I think I was using like an HP all-in-one scanner for years, like scan my stuff. And I mean, Wacom tablet, hello, that was it. But no, I knew how to use Photoshop, however, because as in graduate school, I actually applied to graduate school with physical slides, believe it or not. That's how old it like totally dates me. But I was sort of like the last class, not
That's
digital
awesome.
file. Yeah. But in that time of being there for 3 years, which is odd, but it's a 3-year program for that school. It was at the time anyway. And we had to do, I mean, in order to submit your work to galleries or submit your work for any kind of publications or anything like that, you had to have digital files of your work. So you learned how to be your own photographer and process your own images and use Photoshop to do that. And so I was rehearsed enough in Photoshop to really use it for creating patterns. And I'm so not an Illustrator user at all. I use Photoshop now and scan all of my hand-drawn artwork. But it was so painful for so long. And I think back on how awful it was when they'd be like, can you change this color? Because I'd have to redraw the whole thing. Like I couldn't do it in photo. I didn't have the skill set to just do it in Photoshop. So, I mean, the hours that I put in were like astronomical, really. Like I shouldn't have to do that, but I did, and I figured it out. But like learning how to do a repeat, I learned how to do a repeat like the classic old fashioned way. Like you cut a piece of paper in 4 squares and then you like,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was how I was doing. I mean, I was like so old school about it, even though I really didn't need to be. It's just that I had to teach myself. Like I had to Google how to make a repeat pattern. Like I didn't know what.
And look, I mean, who's to say that those more traditional methods didn't give your work that extra little like classical?
100%. Every time I went to a meeting, they'd be like, "I love seeing the hand in here." You know, it was like,
right.
I was like,
It's all about the touch of the hand. Yeah. I didn't sleep for the last 3 nights. That's because of the touch of my hand. Hey, Paper Peeps. So Kitty Meow Boutique has been a fabulous client of mine for a while now. So hopefully many of my listeners are familiar with not just the dazzling wares from this Chicagoland house of paper, but also its amazing founder, a force of nature better known as Catherine Hildner. This mom of 2, with another scheduled to arrive soon, has created a most intoxicating stationery range. I define the Kitty Meow aesthetic as polished and very smart. Think of the sharpest outfit you own that you feel like $1 million in, but in stationery form. Everything from typography to envelope choice comes together to pack a most enticing punch. But this range is not just about the surface. It's about honoring those connections with those we care about most. And you'll see once you visit kittymeowboutique.com that the wares are divided into witty and sweet because, as Catherine puts it, sometimes you feel a little saucy and sometimes you don't. But Kitty Meow Boutique is so much more than just another pretty face in the marketplace. The empowering messaging found on her cards, invitations, journals, coasters, art prints, and enamel pins elevates the range into something that makes you feel not just seen, but good about yourself too. Everything is essentially a little lift, visually and emotionally, for not just those you love, but you as well. Not only is Kitty Meow available for your personal shopping needs, it's also available wholesale to all those shops looking for something new with which to excite their customers. She's on Fair. Visit kittymeowboutique.fair.com and get your shop started. finally, I think what I love about Catherine most is that she is really all about living your best life, as you'll see for yourself beneath the education tab on her site. She offers KMB Signature Collective, a mastermind for women in the product-based business world who have a love for paper and giftable items, who have an idea and a plan, but need guidance and support to be successful in their efforts. I so agree with Catherine. It's so important to be surrounded by like-minded women and leaders who are willing to put in the work to lift each other up. For that reason, it's not a course. It's a friggin' transformation, people. And Catherine has also started my second favorite podcast, Dreams to Plans, with another brilliant force of nature, my girlfriend Renee, to elevate your daydreams to actual, tangible plans. Oh, and if you're on Clubhouse, follow Kitty Meow so you can tune in to her weekly room Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Small Business Savvy, Insider Secrets You Need to Know. I checked it out for myself last week, and it was just the dose of inspiration and confidence my day needed. So get those good vibes going at kittymeowboutique.com and tell them Sarah sent you. Your star kind of rose as Anthropologie's star rose in a sense. And so there was like this customer recognition that, you know, they knew you, but you were linked with the Anthropologie brand and their aesthetic. So how did that sort of like enable you to grow your own offerings? Because you went beyond ceramics, you went into paper goods, you know, fine giftware, stationery. Like, can you speak to that evolution a little bit?
Sure. So, I mean, as you can imagine, you know, every art director and creative director and anyone who's in the, you know, everyone was shopping at Anthropologie. So, you know, people would recognize my work and they would email me. They would say, hey, we'd love to work with you. And I had only licensed to Anthropologie, and that, you know, as we all know, anyone who's tried or had license with them, it's not normal the way they license to artists. It's like well, it's not abnormal, but it's just very much their own way of doing it, which we can go into if you want. But basically, I didn't really know anything about how the legal aspects of it, what royalty sort of, you know, what were the basic understanding. So I was really out of my depth in that one.
Because licensing is its own beast.
Completely.
I mean, there's agents there. I went to the license show once in New York at Javits, and it was like, it's just booth after booth of property. I mean, it wasn't so much artist driven. It was like, this is the Marvel booth. And if you want to put, you know, Marvel on a sweatshirt, this is where you got to go. So,
and it just was overwhelming for me. And so I was getting all these opportunities, and like you said, Anthropologie and we actually at periods would like step back from like, there was a point where I was really like looking like an in-house brand because I had so many products in their home department that it was really clear that we needed to sort of pull back and then launch a new collection at times. But sort of, or, you know, peak, I think I was like 8 years ago. It was like crazy. I met with my agents, who I still am with now, 7 or 8 years ago. We started talking, and I reached out to them because they had been working with Lotte Jansdotter, and I saw what they were doing for her, and I had taken a workshop with Lotte just to like kind of see what it was in her work. It was in her space in Brooklyn at the time, and it was really interesting to sort of just be a fly on the wall during that and sort of look around and see what her studio was and sort of figure this out. And I asked her some questions, and she was a little weird about it. Like, she really didn't like that, but she's very proprietary and private about that kind of information. So
I mean, yeah,
it's fine. I totally respect that. However, I'm a totally open book. There's nothing, all ships rise with the tide, in my opinion. So if anyone asks me something, I literally don't have anything that's proprietary, really, other than like, you know, NDAs that I've signed, so I can't tell you if it's, you know, what my next project is. But when it comes so when it came to working with, I just had these licensing opportunities and I didn't know what to do with them. So I tried my best to figure it out, and I realized very quickly that I needed an agent. So I ended up with Moxie and Laura and Arlene of Moxie. And, at that time, they were sort of not sure. And we went, in our first meeting, we went over to an Anthropologie in Westport, Connecticut, which is around the corner from their offices. And they're like, all right, well, so, if you're really for real, what is yours here? And I was like walking around and it was like, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And they were like, oh, okay. All right. We're on to something here. Let's go to lunch. It was really funny. I mean, and then it took about 9 months of us talking. And my first license was with Graphique de France. And that was before working with them. I did that on my own.
That's nice. What was it for? Was it cards?
A bunch of stationery, yeah, and a calendar, a couple other things, and it was fine. It was like not my best license, maybe, and I think they were really relying on me. The pitfall of a lot of it was that people were like, "Oh, if we work with her, we'll get into Anthropologie," and it was like, no, that's not necessarily how that's going to go.
In fact, you're probably less. I would think Anthropologie would not want to buy your.
Right, they have me. Why wouldn't they just develop?
Why would they? Right. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe they'll look at their other stuff. Maybe they'll notice them because they're working with you. But I mean,
it took years of us vetting potential licensees. We just really figured out quickly as an agent and myself, like we had to ask really early on whether they thought they were going to get into Anthropologie as a result of working with me. It just wasn't like, we had to kind of like nip that in the bud at the beginning of every conversation.
But that's good. That's good that you're, being honest, fully transparent, and, I think that's the best way to operate.
Yeah.
So, I definitely think of you as a luxury brand. Just like I think of Anthropologie as a luxury. It's not Chanel, but it's, it's very upscale. So I love that during pandemic, the last thing I expected to hear from you was that during pandemic, you came out with all these free printables, free to download printables. Can you tell me how that came about?
Yeah. I early on in the pandemic, I was feeling like a lot of people were feeling tight, and it was a way for me to give people coloring pages and things to do with their kids. In particular, I have a daughter who's 11, and I was sort of realizing that there were some ways for me to round out some of what I was doing with some free and some purchase printables that were like ways to sort of also immediately respond to what was going on. There were some printables that were like, rainbows for your window, about, acceptance and love. The sort of, also there were like moments where I think there were a couple of sort of initiatives for putting rainbows in windows for kids to find in the neighborhood on walks. And
right.
Like
the rainbow walks. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so I was responding to that, and it was a way for me to sort of immediately connect with people. And it was really nice to be able to offer some things like, printable IOUs for mom. And, Darcy Miller's really great at it. And so is House That Lars Built, and they sort of set a precedent for some of those things. And it's just become a really nice way for me to say, I know I have these things for sale, but like, it would be cool if you had a bouquet that matched, that was paper, and you could make it yourself if you want to go there and have a project to do.
I love your paper. I love your paper bouquets. They're so precious.
A way for people. I also wanted to encourage people, especially around the holidays. I think that's when I started. Was Easter was like the first, Passover and Easter was the first holiday during the pandemic that. And I was really like, it doesn't have to be this weird thing. Like, you can make it special at home, even with just for free. Like, just download these things and make a nice table. Like, what,
I love that you picked the Jewish holiday that we hate. That I hate. Like, I love that you picked something beautiful.
Well, that was the first one. It was really the first one that happened.
Like, we just finished surviving Passover, and like,
yes.
Okay. But I love that you made it something beautiful. It is a beautiful holiday. It's a beautiful concept.
It was more about
not so beautiful.
How do you make your life right? How do you make even just like a celebration happen just for you at home? And and a bunch of other things have come. I'm about to launch my first clothing line. That was an opportunity that arose during I
That's
know, it's very
awesome.
exciting. And so May 13th, we have a clothing line with a company called Joni. And, I think the pandemic in general sort of condensed some things for me. There were some relationships that I let go that I thought I would never, I fought very hard to get. And I felt like it was important to walk away from, both for during some of the racial tension that's, ongoing, but like some of the things that came to light during a sort of Me Too moment in sort of racial injustice within companies, if you will.
Right, right.
And I was like, I can't work with this company anymore. And there are like a bunch of reasons that we were already on the sort of fence about it. And it was just like, I really took stock of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And it was an opportunity for me to um, reassess and concentrate my efforts to move forward on things that are really exciting. And this opportunity to work with this clothing company came around, and it's a sustainable and organic cottons and sustainable fabrics, and size inclusive to a point. I wish they were more size inclusive. I'm already running into some issues with that in my opinion, but um,
That's amazing. I can't wait to see. I'm so excited.
yes, really
I almost
excited.
don't want to ask, but is it going to be an anthropology?
No, I'm the only one
So it's not,
retailing in the US.
wow, cool, cool,
And they are
cool.
an online, they don't wholesale, so they are online only. And
Awesome.
actually came about because of Anthropologie. So the woman who is the creative director there, was in love with my work forever, went to Anthropologie in the UK, and really thought it would be such a great opportunity for me to make clothing, was shocked that they had never done it with me. And
It is kind of, now that you mention it, it is kind of shocking.
yeah, we
Like, I'm
talked to a couple
surprised no
friends,
one,
but
they probably didn't have any of the clothing buyers in those meetings with you.
no,
They didn't
they
pull
were on
anyone in.
completely, yeah, different sides of the building, and yeah, they didn't want to share.
That's funny. Well, I think there's a lot of wisdom in, we were talking about licensing, but I love that you say, like, you sort of took the time to, take a look at your partners and be like, is this someone I want to be partnering
Mhm.
with? So many people, when they get into licensing, they're just so eager to license their work. Like, I've heard a lot of horror stories where someone licenses this design or that design, and they don't like how it's presented. They don't like how it's used. It looks cheap. It looks, this, that, the other thing. And so it's smart. And I also think it's just really smart to say no to things that aren't working, because then, like, you just create space in your life for something like really good to like assume that spot, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think you have to be in a financial and uh, sort of confident enough position in what you're doing in order to be there. Like you said, I mean, I have had all of those experiences you just described, and it's really awful when you feel like you're putting a product out there that's not um, in line, or something that you would really. I mean, listen. I think there are plenty of reasons to put product out there that you wouldn't necessarily purchase, but the customer, like, you're meeting a customer's needs that you don't necessarily have a need for, and there's like a fine balance between that. And I like some of the clothing. I don't know that it's like personally something that I would necessarily choose off
Right.
the rack, but it's definitely in line with my brand, and it makes a ton of sense for the customer. And I think we'll find out like how the chips fall on the other side of it. But we've got another collection launching afterwards a year from now, so that'll be really nice to have more follow up on that.
Yeah, you'll see
And
what works.
we're
And
going to make stationery out of the patterns. I just
oh
got
my
an email from
God.
Beely and Shoaf about, they were like, hey, we love this, like these patterns are great. Like, can we put them on stationery? And I was like, absolutely. So, I mean, you just never really know. But I think, like you said, I made room for, I really assessed what I wanted the brand's values to portray in the relationships. Look, I mean, I have such limited time, and I have a whole other career as a fine artist making one of a kind artwork.
Right.
And my time is limited. So, I'm at the position where I have this privilege to decide, and I really want to make sustainable and as sustainable and ethical produced products as possible, and reduce our plastic to as like if we could get rid of it completely, I would. And
I,
as carbon neutral and all the things, like I'm just like, let's
right.
do it. And so if printables become a part of that because we can offer them to people to not have to ship them and things like that, that's excellent.
And
So
they're immediate. I mean, well, you mentioned to me in a very brief email, you mentioned the many benefits of essentially just putting free imagery out there
mhm.
for you. Are there others that you haven't mentioned? I mean, there's this immediacy, and I think in terms of like, your many fans, how they must have been like, oh my gosh, she just put this stuff and I can download it and print it out and color it
Right.
home. And I haven't been out of my pajamas in a month, and but I have this exciting thing to do with my kid, or I mean, that's got to be
Yeah.
one benefit.
People, I've gotten a lot of thank yous. People have connected by doing the projects together over Zoom. A lot of
Oh,
international customers because we're not shipping internationally right now, and we don't have a lot of people don't have a lot of access to our work outside of the US, and so a lot of people have been excited about that. And we're trying hard, but it doesn't seem, the UK just kind of shot themselves in the foot really with Brexit and some of their tariffs. It's so impossible to export there now. It's like so
really?
expensive. Yeah, we just went through a huge sort of harangue about trying to figure out that with a couple of my partners. And I don't do any wholesale myself, but I've been just starting to do some sort of production of work. Like I brought back some juice glasses out of the archive that Anthropologie was making for a long time, and they've stopped producing. So people have just requested them so much that I figured out how to do it myself. So same
That's
exact
awesome.
factory, same exact designs, everything. And so we brought those back, and I'm sort of a foray into production of my own, but exclusive to the website. And so I think that the thing that I think it's a way of saying thank you. Really, for me, it's a out of gratitude, and it's a way for me to round out what I have to offer and fill in gaps that other companies that I work with maybe didn't want to produce other things for that collection, or it's a way to and actually the coloring page of the unicorn became a scarf that's about to launch that goes along
Wow.
with the clothing. So it's like things like that. Like I just, it's encouraging me also to take the time
Mhm,
to
mhm.
develop some things for fun. And usually those become something else later. And it's really satisfying to see people sharing those images once they've
Sure.
worked on them or set up the table. And I just, yeah, it's a way to connect with people, and
Right.
not always have to have it be something about money in exchange.
Right. Transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I started hearing, there's so much talk about making retail a destination, making retail an experience,
Mm-hmm.
interactive displays. Obviously that's not really happening now. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you can make your site, interactive, if you can make that an experience, if you can feel like you're immersing yourself in the brand and it's full of surprises, it just makes you, more loyal to it. And it really, you have a deeper connection to it. And I love them. Like I have a girlfriend who lives down the street who's spent almost all the pandemic coloring, and I don't think she's seen your site. So I'm going to text her that link, like, right when we're done, because I know next time or when I can go in her house, she's going to have the flowers, your paper
Right,
flowers
right.
and a paper vase out on the table. Um, so you mentioned a little bit about Bailey and Shof, but I can't let you go without telling me a little bit about the stationery ranges and collaborations you currently have that are available with Big Wheel Press and Bailey and Shof. And my guess is there's a few that you might have that I haven't heard of. So
I think I've just been working with Beely and Shof and Big Wheel, both for different reasons. One,
Mhm.
Big Wheel is a letterpress, and the greeting cards that I make with Beely and Shof are all offset or digitally printed. And there's something, I've translated a lot of my work from 3 dimensions, like the juice glass artwork, into greeting cards because they kind of were acting like a greeting card already,
Mhm,
a little
mhm,
bit
mhm, mhm.
like a
Right.
gift with sentimental value attached. And so it translated really well into greeting cards. And so I'm really excited about Big Wheel, and I haven't got anything new coming. Actually, he's been really sort of trying hard to keep his head above water, I think, with pandemic and with some of the closings of some of the bigger companies. in the greeting card world has sort of trickled down, has been tough for some of the smaller print houses like him. But he also owns an art supply store, which is where
Guild Art Supply. Like
yeah,
I get his emails. It looks like an amazing art supply store.
It is. And it's really been, he had to move it and move away from the Main Street location that he had because it was too expensive to stay. And that was his first business really. And he owns a frame shop as well. So he's really a multifaceted local print guy. Like he's just known for, his rebuilding, presses. And I mean, he kind of is like a jack of all trades, but I met him because I was buying art supplies there and we talked and chatted. And my husband actually took a letterpress workshop from him before I even, he and I started working together. And he launched he was doing a few cards and things like that, but he really took it to the next level when he and I was his first licensed artist. And
I remember, and I remember that mirrored, like a mirrored card. It was like a mirrored surface card. That was exquisite. I don't know if you still have it, but I can still remember when meeting you at Stationery Show and seeing it.
Yep.
I think he had like half a dozen cards from you, maybe.
Yep. And so that's ongoing. And I think it'll just be one of those sort of, he lives 15 minutes. The shop is 15 minutes from here. And
5 minutes later. Yeah. Sorry. You accidentally hit the mute button.
It happened.
I was basically just talking about Bill and Big Wheel Press. And I think this is a long-term relationship that will go on for, however long it feels good. And we do have, I was saying that we do have maybe a back burner project that is a little mini book actually that he would help me get digitally printed and then or offset and then have him do the cover, which is a fortune telling tea book, which I want to self-produce so that you can buy that with your tea and your dogs. So it's been sort of
adorable.
Sort of how I'm using Bill and working with him to do fun projects. And he'll request things occasionally and stuff like that. And Beeline Show has been great. We just launched our first collection last year, and we're going to do another, obviously, with this Oliver print sort of reflection of the clothing line. And I'm excited to see how I translate that artwork. That really just happened this week. So they're excited about that, and so am I. And just really, we've noticed a real uptick in sales of cards during the pandemic, and people have really stepped up and started purchasing and sending cards more. And I think that's really nice, at least from us. And I don't think we're really considered, people don't come to us for stationery necessarily, but I think they're starting to, which is really fun to see. And I'm really excited about continuing with all of that in the future. And, we don't have any other, things tucked away or anything like that.
I think that's a lot. Clothes, cards, maybe a book. Who knows?
Collaborations coming up this summer, some beach chairs that just launched, but they will be available on the site this summer, and a new paper tableware company, Sophistiplate. We're about to launch some new summer tableware for outdoor picnics and things like that, and another summer apparel line that we've got in the works for beach, so like SPF 50 recycled plastic clothing and things like that. Yeah, really exciting. I'm curious to see where we all go. 10 years from now, I hope to listen back on this and be like, oh, I was in my baby phase.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see it all. And there's so much. I can't wait to see your clothes and what's coming out with Bailey and Shof. I know they're going to do an amazing job because everything that's coming out of that card house is like top notch. So thank you so much for taking the time with all you have going on to come in the paper fold.
And I've really enjoyed getting to know you through the years, Sarah, and I can't wait to show people what we've got coming.
Thank you so much, Molly, for coming by the Paper Fold. And thank you so much for listening. As always, email me at sarah@thepapernerd with anything I can do for you. And if you are liking what you were hearing, please subscribe and leave me a good rating and review. I can't tell you how much that helps. Thank you so much, Paper Peeps. Please stay well.